For decades, the Netherlands sold the world a story. A country where prostitution was legal and regulated, where cannabis was sold openly in cozy coffee shops, where same-sex marriage came first, where euthanasia was framed as a dignified choice, where pragmatism replaced punishment. Amsterdam became a pilgrimage site for Americans and Brits chasing what they couldn't find at home. Freedom, tolerance, progressive enlightenment. The Dutch were different, we were told. They had evolved beyond the moral panics that gripped other nations. That was the mythology. And then, in the latest election cycle, the Netherlands handed a political breakthrough to Geert Wilders, someone who built his career arguing that Islam is incompatible with Dutch society and proposing restrictions that clash with the Netherlands' global brand of tolerance.
Since I spoke out against Islam 8 years ago and spoke the truth about as I see it, the real identity of this ideology, it's not about me, it's about all the people in the free Western world who have the guts to speak out against Islam.
The country that symbolized tolerance had apparently abandoned it. Or had it? The international press had a ready explanation. Europe was lurching right, nationalist parties were rising, immigration anxiety, cultural backlash, economic resentment. The Netherlands, they said, was catching the same contagion. Wilders' Party for Freedom ran on familiar themes: tighten borders, restrict Islamic schools, challenge Brussels. He used language designed to polarize, because polarization forces attention. And the conclusion wrote itself: tolerance was dead. The liberals had lost, but that surface reading misses the deeper mechanism. Dutch tolerance was always performative, not primarily about accepting difference, about managing it. Take cannabis. Outsiders call it legal, but the Dutch model was a controlled contradiction. Coffee shops could sell it while growing it remained illegal. A gray zone supply chain everyone learned to live with. The purpose wasn't freedom, it was containment. Keep it visible, keep it designated, keep it away from ordinary life. Prostitution worked similarly. Legalization wasn't only about rights, it was also zoning, controlled districts, predictable policing, taxable revenue, and a clear separation from family spaces. The Dutch model was simple: make vice manageable and keep it segregated. This wasn't progressivism, it was pragmatic separation. And it worked best when the people associated with these worlds were easy to marginalize: foreigners, tourists, and social outcasts. Once you see that, the political story stops looking like a sudden betrayal and starts looking like a reveal. Look at what happened when immigration stopped being temporary. In the 1960s and 70s, Turkish and Moroccan workers were invited to fill labor shortages. They were called guest workers, a term that carried an assumption: guests leave. But many didn't leave. They brought families, they built communities, they built mosques. Diversity became permanent, no longer quarantined in a policy loophole or a tolerated district. And tolerance began to narrow. By the 1990s, Dutch politics popularized labels for foreign origin that didn't land evenly. They weren't aimed at Germans or Brits. They were aimed at the groups that didn't blend in and wouldn't disappear. And long before Wilders became an international headline, mainstream voices were already arguing that Islam was incompatible with Dutch norms. Local governments experimented with management policies that weren't officially segregation, but often looked like it from street level. Even the Netherlands' most celebrated progressive milestones came with boundaries. Same-sex marriage became more than legislation. It became identity, a way of saying, this is who we are. If you can't accept it, you don't belong. Tolerance wasn't universal, it was conditional, and the conditions were simple: be invisible or be Dutch. Then came a turning point that changed the emotional weather of the country. May 6th, 2002. 9 days before a national election, Pim Fortuyn was assassinated. Fortuyn wasn't a typical far-right figure. He was openly gay, flamboyant, provocative, but he said Islam was a backwards culture and that the Netherlands was full.
Yes, it is a backward culture. I have written a complete book about it by Mr. Huntington. And you don't say to Mr. Huntington, he is a racist.
His killer wasn't an Islamist. It was a white Dutch activist who claimed he was acting to protect vulnerable Muslims. The assassination traumatized the Netherlands, not because Fortuyn was universally loved, he was divisive, but because political violence had arrived and the illusion of civilized distance shattered. His young party surged immediately after, and the message to the establishment was unmistakable. Immigration was no longer something you could manage with euphemisms. The system responded in a familiar way: tighten rules while still speaking the language of tolerance. Integration programs became mandatory, Civic exams tested Dutch values, including liberal social norms. The test was blunt: assimilate or leave. Tolerance with teeth. And then came the second trauma. In 2004, filmmaker Theo van Gogh was murdered in Amsterdam after making a short film with Ayaan Hirsi Ali criticizing the treatment of women under certain interpretations of Islam. The killer was a young Dutch-Moroccan man born in the Netherlands, a second-generation citizen, radicalized anyway. The trial was chilling, no remorse, a promise of more. For many Dutch citizens, the conclusion hardened. Multiculturalism had failed, and integration wasn't working. Policy tightened again. The language changed. Less tolerance, more compliance. And in that atmosphere, Geert Wilders understood the moment. He split from the mainstream right, built the Party for Freedom, and centered one message: Islam is incompatible with Dutch freedom. Borders must tighten. Europe must be challenged.
Yes, I do have a problem with Islam. I believe Islam is a violent and dangerous religion and even a retarded culture.
But Wilders didn't present himself as an enemy of liberalism. He presented himself as its defender. Free speech, gender equality, LGBTQ rights, secularism. It was rhetorical judo. Turn progressive identity into a gate and call it protection. And it worked. Even when he lost elections, the baseline moved. Mainstream politicians condemned him publicly, then quietly adopted parts of his framing. The Overton window shifted, policies tightened, the cultural common sense changed, and eventually, he won. Here's the paradox. Wilders rose by defending Dutch liberalism against an illiberal ideology, but the liberalism he defended was never universal. It was tribalism dressed in progressive language. Same-sex marriage became a marker of Dutchness. Gender equality became a way to distinguish us from them. Secularism became a demand that religion stay private, invisible, manageable. The Netherlands didn't abandon tolerance. It clarified who gets it. And the quiet answer has been consistent. People who already fit. That's why this wasn't a sudden national transformation. It was a logical conclusion. Wilders didn't create these conditions. He exposed them. And this matters beyond one country, because the Netherlands isn't alone in the pattern. Across Europe, societies that branded themselves as post-national and progressive are hardening their boundaries, politically, culturally, administratively, not simply because the right is rising, but because the European version of multiculturalism was often conditional from the start. It demanded assimilation into societies that didn't want to change. It demanded integration without offering belonging. It celebrated diversity in the abstract while segregating it in practice. And when immigrant communities built their own institutions, schools, neighborhoods, religious spaces, it was framed as separatism. So what happens when growth slows, pressure rises, and the old accommodations start to feel expensive? The myth collapses. The Netherlands didn't become intolerant overnight. It stopped pretending. So what does that mean for the future? For Europe, it means the end of a comfortable story. That prosperity and liberal identity can absorb mass immigration without changing who gets to belong. For the Netherlands, it means Wilders now has to govern. Campaign promises collide with coalition reality. Rhetoric meets bureaucracy. Some of his hardest proposals won't happen as stated, but the conversation has already moved. Immigration is now central. Integration means assimilation. Tolerance has conditions, and the rest of Europe is watching.